Welcome back to Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence. My name is Steve Werner, and today I am actually being interviewed for the second part of my story. I've joined by my good friend, Dove Gordon. Dove is going to interview me. He volunteered to do this. It was his idea, and I actually thought it was genius. Dove helps people build profitable partnerships, helps people attract the perfect client to them. Dove, I'm going to hand it over to you. You can tell them a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump back into part two of this interview.
Sure. So I'm CEO of profitablelationships.com. And if anyone wants to get a better sense of what we're all about, you can head over there. But I'm happy to give a gift to everybody here. We'll set this up after this, and so that it works. But profitablelationships.com/Werner, Werner, as in Steve Werner. We'll give you a free copy of my manual called How to Systematically and Consistently Attract First-Rate Clients. And we sold that for 5 years for $100. And we'll give that away for free to your listeners. So how to systematically and consistently attract first-rate clients. It's one of our favorite audience favorites. So let's go back to your story, Steve. So we covered a lot in that almost 2 hour long first session, from when you were a little boy, wanting, I think we talked about this, wanting to, I don't remember all of it, wanting a pair of Air Jordans, right?
Yeah.
Needing a job, knocking on doors, getting comfortable doing things, waiting tables, making more money than your manager, right? Traveling the world, working in fine dining at it was Ponderosa, I think.
Well, Ponderosa wasn't fine dining. Ponderosa was a bottom end.
Oh, that's right.
Cheap steakhouse. That was in high school. But then I got to
Okay.
Vail. You're right. You are correct.
Vail. Yeah, that's right. No, I got mixed up. That's right. As I'm reading that and looking at my notes, I think I got that wrong. I think I mixed something up. That's right. Vail, of course. Vail, the ski resort. And so many other things. People have to go back and listen to it. So this time I want to look at your core theme in your business today. And my understanding is your core theme has to do with one-to-many sales, meaning selling from one to many. I'm interested in kind of bridging the gap between your journey so far, because I don't know how you ended up doing what you're doing today. And what are some things you've learned about one-to-many sales that I can learn from, and everybody listening as well?
Sure.
So yeah, tell us about this transition.
I mean, basically, so I was in Vail and I woke up one day and I was like, how did I get here? I started a business in college. I did the real estate stuff. I was like on this fast track entrepreneur, like rocket ship. And I instead traveled, which was great. I love travel. And then ended up working in Vail. And I was like, and I climbed the ladder. When I got started in fine dining, I was like, I'm just going to be a bartender. I'm just going to wait tables. It's easy. I can go home at the end of the day. But I think there's something in the entrepreneur mindset. I talk about this a lot. Like Michael Jordan always said, I want the ball at the end. I want the weight of the world on my shoulders. I want that pressure. It's what drives me to be the best. Pretty much anyone who is successful as in an entrepreneur or anyone that rises to the top of anything says that. Well, I ended up saying that in restaurants through my actions, just by going from, I couldn't just sit by and let bad processes happen. I couldn't let bad customer service happen. I couldn't let restaurants are all about, anything is all about having systems. So I rose to the top in restaurants in management, but there's a pay ceiling that you hit that you're just really, as a restaurant GM, you're not going to make more than, I would say 100, maybe 120 at the very top 0.2%. Right. And I was there. So I looked around, I had gone to a Tony Robbins event, and I didn't come away from that event with a cut, clear plan. I just knew that looked like a lot of fun. And at the same time, I'd read the 4 Hour Work Week a couple years before. I think I read that in 2009, 2010. I remember Tim Ferriss's question, what would it look like if this was easy? And at the time, I laughed at that question because I was like, well, if it was easy, I would just have all the money in my bank account. Since then, I've argued a lot with that question because I don't think that's what really he meant by it, or that's not the answer, right? What do we want? We want fulfillment. We want to feel like what we do makes a difference. Well, what would that look like? What would making a difference look like? And as I wrestled with this question from like the Tony Robbins event to there, I decided I'm going to hold live events. Like that looks like fun. I knew how to hold the live events from a back of the house point of view, like how to set up the curtains, how to set up the chairs, how to do all the planning and people management. And for some reason, I thought that is what an event was. So I moved to Las Vegas and I went down to Treasure Island. So I sold everything in Vail, moved out of my super nice ski side condo and moved to Las Vegas. Rented a little apartment, nothing super fancy, a little 1-bedroom off the strip. It was nice. It was plain. But I was like, this will be fine. Like this will get me there 6 months from now. I'm going to be a millionaire because that's what every person thinks. Yeah. So went down third day there and rented the biggest ballroom that Treasure Island had and proceeded to try to hold a live event. That was the start of it. I don't know, like I can keep talking about that stuff, but what does that mean?
Proceeded to try to hold a live event? What did you do? And what were the results?
That's what I want people to think. Like, how do you do that? Well, I had no idea. And I learned that, like, you would think you would put a little bit
but
more
you thought you had an idea. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point because, again, we've discussed some of this before, but you thought that you knew what to do because in the past you had run many events like this, ballroom type events, or at least some, right? The corporate events at Vail. It didn't even occur to you that getting people in the room would be a challenge because you never had to deal with that.
Correct.
And it's remarkable. I think it's a really good example because so many of the problems or the obstacles that we all face moving forward in our own businesses, it's going to be things that we didn't even realize is going to be a thing.
Well, that's exactly, I literally thought like, oh, you just put a website up and people buy tickets. Like sales to me growing up was never hard. Like we've walked through the whole thing, right? Like you knock on doors, you sell tickets, you give people what they want in restaurants. They're coming in, you just suggest things, they buy it. I thought, well, I put together the event, there will be people who will buy. And so I built the website and then I was like, oh, I have to drive traffic. And I did, like, I bought a list because I was like, oh, I just need an email list. I'll go buy a list. So I went and bought a list. I emailed it. I tell this story when I talk about email. The first email that I sent, I loaded up the list into an autoresponder. You can't do this today. In 2014, they didn't check the autoresponders. So I uploaded a list of, I think it was about 60,000 and wrote an email and pressed send. Well, two things happened. The first is, if anyone who knows me and is on my list, I'm dyslexic and I don't spell very well. I have to physically actually like talk out loud when I'm typing and spell the words. It's kind of funny. So that first email, I just assumed that it would be spell checked. It wasn't. We ended up with, there were 27 misspelled words in the first email. And that, like, it was just bad. Right. Like, and then I got all these spam complaints. So I got that account shut down and I was like, oh, that didn't work. I did end up selling one ticket to somebody from that list because they started a conversation with me. They said there are so many misspelling words. And I wrote them back and said, well, I don't know how to spell very well, but it is a real event. That was one of the tickets that sold.
I just want to draw out a little bit more of this because you scheduled this event. How many days was it going to be?
It was a 3-day event. I got 18 speakers. So it was a restaurant event. I was like, oh, I'll hold an event on restaurants because that sounds like fun. And that was what I was passionate about at the time. I don't know if passion's the right word, but it's what I knew. And I enjoyed great customer service. And it was something that it still lacks to this day in most restaurants. And I was like, I'll put on something around customer service. So I had I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I know I had 5 chefs. I had a couple GMs of restaurants. I had service trainers. I had a couple wine sommeliers. I had like people that were focused on this. And I thought it was the event that I would go to. That doesn't mean I knew how to sell it. So I set up websites. I spent all this money on advertising because I just thought like you threw money at advertising and it worked, right? I assumed that people were in integrity. I was a little naive for sure. That event, in the interest of time, I won't go through the whole thing here, but that event did not go well. 4 weeks before the event, I had sold a total of 2 tickets. I was negative over $30,000, and I was on the hook for $125K to Treasure Island for the room block, for food and beverage, and for the event space. And they called me in. They were just like, we need to have a meeting. I was like, oh yeah, we definitely need to have a meeting. And I kind of knew how that meeting was going to go. I had a good idea. I was hoping, I just told them like, look, I did the best that I could. If you guys want to sue me, you can sue me. I'll file bankruptcy. You won't get any money. And it's just going to be a pain in the ass. And they came back and agreed. They held my deposit, which was a $5K deposit. I was really hoping that they would let me have that back. Because I had very little money in the bank. Like when you watch your bank account in a period of, it was about 4.5 months. My bank account went from like 35,000 to a little under 3K. At one point I was down to 500, and then I got some money that I was owed from something.
You had no income.
Zero income. Zero. Well, when I moved there, 30K, especially in 2014, that's probably like 60K today. Like I was like, oh, this is going to be fine. And as soon as I start selling tickets, because I rented a space for 1,500 people. So I had done the math. I was like 1,500 people. They're going to pay, $500 for a ticket. This is going to be great. I'm going to make all this money, blah, 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 blah. Like these are the stories that go in their head. And I think every entrepreneur has these dreams of grandeur when they get started. Because if we wouldn't have anything driving us, right? We all want to. This is something I want to call out. Like we all want to change people's lives. We all want to have impact. 100%. We also want to make money. And if money is not on the same level as that, like I had this argument actually with somebody in JVMM. So I wouldn't call it an argument. It was a discussion. Impact is a driver, right? If you could see the screen, I'm like holding them, but money has to be at least on the same level as impact, because if not, you will not make enough money in your business to sustain yourself, and you'll feel burnout. This is where life coaches, like I've worked with several coaches, right? And they're charging $50. It's like, how many people do you have to coach? One of my ex-girlfriends this was her. She $50 a session. How many people do you have to take care of in a month to make ends meet, right? So you're paying taxes on that $50. So really you're making $30. So how many?
What was the other side? The other side to this discussion
of what? What do you mean?
You're taking this position that making money has to be a value as well.
It has to be they said impact was the most important thing. If you just focus on having impact, the money will follow. Mm-hmm. And my argument internally in your head, everybody wants to have impact. I don't believe that you can be an entrepreneur, especially in like information marketing, coaching, consulting, without wanting to have an impact. My argument is that you at least have money. The drive to make income has to be at least as strong as the impact. Honestly, I think money has to be a little bit higher than impact, because if impact is higher, you will price your things lower. You will do things for free that you should be charging for, and you will never, ever. I think that's where most people are. Their impact is here, and they're like, if on a scale of 1 to 10, their impact is at like a 7 and 8, and their make money is at like a 5 or 6. So when push comes to shove, you do stuff for free, you give your time away, you don't structure your business correctly, and you don't make any money. And then like you end up burning out, right? There are a lot of people. I've been in this game for 8 years. I've seen most people last about a year. Maybe they last a year and a half on I call it the struggle bus. They're on that bus of I'm charging 50 or 100 or $200. I'm trying to sell low ticket items, and they're making like $1,000, maybe $2,000 a month. And at that rate, like it's really hard to get by. And some
Right.
people do it. Either they have
Hmm.
a spouse supporting them or they had some money somewhere. A lot of people dig
Yeah,
into
no,
their 401.
it definitely, you have to take it seriously. It has to be, it has to be something that you realize that it's necessary to keep going, and it's also necessary to want to keep going in most cases.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
we can go.
yeah. Let's stay focused on your journey here. So you had this this event. It was the hotel called you in for a meeting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, you are correct. Let's bring this back full circle. The hotel calls me in. We have a
It's my
discussion.
job to take us off track, take us onto a tangent, and then bring us back when I feel it's ready.
Perfect. So I end up walking out of the hotel office, and at this point, I've got, I don't know, maybe 2 grand, 2,500 to my name. I have one credit card with a 3K limit on it. And I'm sitting at the bar, in the Frog Bar in Treasure Island, and like I could hear all the slot machines behind me. They're like ching, 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 and money pouring out of them. I remember this like scream of some woman who won playing craps. I don't know what she won, but she was going nuts at the crap table, which is probably 20 feet away from this bar. And I had a drink. I had a hot fudge sundae that I couldn't eat. I had one friend who came down there with me, and they are now successful. They've had 2 software exits, multiple millions of dollars. They were sitting there with me at the bar. At the time, they had done okay. They owned their business. They were doing fine, but they hadn't had their exits yet. But they said, I was sitting there, and she said, what do you want to do? Because I had offers on the table from headhunting companies that wanted me to come back into the restaurant business, and I had this other side of like, I really wanted to hold this event, but I just felt crushed. And she said, what do you want to do? What do you really want to do? And I said, you know what? Those restaurant offers will always be there. I can always do that again. I really want to do this. And I think I think about Michael Jordan. I think about like I didn't play basketball that much growing up, but I guess it goes back to the shoes maybe. But I think about like him getting cut from his high school team and then that pushing him. And I feel like every entrepreneur has had that where we just get smacked down and it just like it makes you angry and excited and invigorated all at the same time. And that's where I was. And I was like, I just don't know. And she said, well, look, we have a spare room. It's not very big, but you can come stay with us for a couple months so you get on your feet and figure out what you want to do. But our requirement is that if you're going to stay with us, you have to work on your business. Like you can't float around, you can't play video games. Not that I really would have anyway, but you have to focus. And she was like, if you want to do that, you can stay with us. So I took her up on that. I still have a picture on my phone of the room. So we went down to the thrift store, got like a bed, got some stuff for a couple $100, and I started going to the library. I just started reading. I knew nothing about marketing, so I checked out half of the marketing department at the Las Vegas Public Library. Marketing for dummies. That's where I started. The pivotal moment in all of this, I don't know, a couple weeks in, we were driving across town to meet at an all-you-could-eat sushi. I was not working at the time. I had like $2,500, and at this time, I think it was whittled down to maybe 1,800. Like I was being frugal. There wasn't a lot of anything spending money. Money like not a lot going on. But we drove across town. We went to an all-you-could-eat sushi. They did all-you-could-eat sushi lunch for $12. And my car at the time was a 2001 Toyota, which still had a tape player in it. One of the things that I checked out of the library was this cassette tape program. And I didn't know what it was, but I thought, well, it's going to take me 45 minutes to get across town to this $12 sushi place. I'll take the tape. I'll put one of these in. We'll see if there's anything good on. Well, I got to the sushi place and I was on the second side of the first tape and I stayed in the car to finish it. It was that good. And it was a program called Butts and Seats by Dan Kennedy, classic direct marketer. Where like if you don't know who Dan Kennedy is, everybody has come from him. Joe Polish, Frank Kern, Russell Brunson, Eben Pagan, all the original OGs came from Dan Kennedy.
And Jay Abraham, the two of them.
Yeah, like Jay Abraham, Gary Halbert, and Dan Kennedy. But Dan Kennedy's inner circle, he was the first person who did an inner circle, and they were all in his inner circle. Jay Abraham also, we'll get to his story in a little bit because he actually helped me as well. So I listened to this tape and I was like, you know what? I can do what he's talking about. And it goes back to knocking on doors, right? So I went back. I was like, I ate lunch and I listened to the tape deck driving home. And then I went to the thrift store and I spent like $10 on a tape player because we didn't have a tape player. No one had a tape player anymore. Bought a cheap tape player that I could put in my room. And I took a bunch of notes on this program. And I went down to South Point Casino and I rented another room. It was a $500 deposit, no food and beverage minimum, no hotel block. I rented it for 2 days. It was $500 down, and the total rental fee was $1,200. So this was like half of what I had left in money, probably less. But I was like, you know what? I can do this. And I went and I used Eventbrite to sell the tickets. But what Dan Kennedy talks about in that book, the book audio cassette program, was basically going around, and if you know Grant Cardone, this is how Grant Cardone started as well. But Dan Kennedy talks about going around, knocking on doors, and giving 10-minute like little talks about what you're going to cover at the event. Well, I didn't know what I was going to cover at the event. He said sell to chiropractors or dentists. So I literally looked up online which Las Vegas had more of, and it was more dentists. I remember going to Google Maps or some like Google and finding out there were more dentists. I was like, well, dentists it is. So I went around and I literally walked into dentist's office in Las Vegas and handed them flyer that said, and it's so silly to me. It was internet marketing, how to use internet marketing and social media to grow your business. I sold tickets on Eventbrite. They were $497. If they bought them in the office, I did 2 tickets for $300 or 4 tickets for $500. And I filled my entire event knocking on doors. That was the whole thing. If you know what donut drops are, you take donuts in because they'll listen to you. They'll give you 30 seconds if you bring them donuts. Krispy Kreme actually cut me off in Las Vegas. They run coupons that were buy 1 dozen, get 1 dozen free. And I would go in and buy 3 dozen donuts. And what I did was then I would take them and I would wrap them on a paper plate with the Krispy Kreme. I would take a bunch of the Krispy Kreme wax paper and make it look like it came from Krispy Kreme, but I would do 3 or 4 donuts instead of the dozen. So I'd break them up. But that's how I filled the first event.
How many seats did you have to fill?
80.
So you fill 80 seats. Fantastic. 80 okay.
Seats. I made about $9,000. Are you enjoying this episode? Do you want to know how you can tell better stories and use story selling in your business? Check the description down below for my free story selling course. This blueprint gives you everything you need to start using story selling in your business. All right, let's jump back to the episode.
Well, that's fantastic. And your messaging, I think, was much better. I don't remember what the messaging was from the first event, but yes, it's something about customer service in restaurants, right? I mean, that doesn't. I mean, it's not. You're not talking to what we'd say it would call a very strong pain point there, right? I mean,
not at all. That's exactly.
Right? And that's that. I imagine that's one of the things that Dan Kennedy's program taught you right away.
Well, it did indirectly. So Butts and Seats is actually a pretty advanced program because most people aren't going to go say, I want to hold an event. What I did was I literally looked at, I think there was something in there around pain points, but it wasn't like a direct marketing course. I looked at, it came with some samples. It had a workbook and I literally took one of the pieces and just changed it around. And I was like, internet marketing. He did talk about how to find speakers and how to do that. Cause I had 4 speakers fly in for that event that I paid for their flights. I paid for their flights and hotel. I did not pay them a speaker fee, but we had 4 people that were doing well in that industry. They weren't so this is what was really interesting. They were dentists themselves. They were not selling a how to grow your practice course, but they had done well with social media marketing. And I found them, got them to come speak. That was the first event. And that, like, I made 9K. I was like, this is great. Then I went to one of Dan's events and I paid like an extra $200 to sit at Dan's table and you get to ask him a question. So I told him this experience. I thought I was on top of the world. He like literally like looked at me. If you know Dan Kennedy, he's a grumpy old man, and he called me an idiot. He was just like, "You're an idiot." That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "You have to sell something. Like the whole point of holding an event is to sell them something. You have a super qualified hot lead. They paid you money to come in a room and listen to you and your speakers sell them something." And I said, "Well, like." Naive, right? I was like, I don't have anything to sell. And he was like, build something or sell one of my products and I'll give you 40%. So this ended up me buying the resale rights to magnetic marketing for a year so that I could sell magnetic marketing. I ended up holding another event doing the exact same thing, only for chiropractors. So I went around and flyered chiropractors and I sold magnetic marketing. That event, we ended up, I think we did around 20,000. When it was all said and done between ticket sales and back to the room sales. And I had to give Dan half. And then I got smart, right? Like the wheels started turning. They were rusty or just like not like they were made out of wood and like square. They didn't turn real well, but it was like, well, I can build my own. Whatever this is, I can just kind of copy it. Like, don't steal. I would never say steal, and Dan wouldn't say steal, but I can put my own spin on it because by this time I read all the time. I threw out my TV in the year 2000. We literally had a TV burning party as part of college. So I didn't have a TV. So I read all the time. So I had read by this point, we were probably 9 months into this. I had probably read 50 books on direct marketing. I had listened to some courses. I found a place that I could I found a place that was a library for courses. It has since been shut down, which makes me sad because there was a guy who collected all these courses and you had to pay a deposit, but he would send you the course so you could use it. And then you would send the course back. It was like a library, but for courses, and it was great. It's no longer available. But I had gone through some courses. I learned a lot more. So I put together my own little thing. And this ended up with me consulting. I did consulting for, I think, 2 or 3 events. I sold consulting where I would fly to your office, dentist and chiropractor, fly to your office, sit down with you, spend 2 or 3 days in your business, and give you some suggestions. Well, everybody wanted, this was 2015, everybody wanted Facebook ads. That's all anybody wanted to talk about. Facebook ads, Facebook ads, Facebook ads. So I did what anybody would do, and I started running Facebook ads for people. Facebook ads and Infusionsoft. So Infusionsoft was just getting going. Dan Kennedy was one of their early investors. I believe nobody knows for sure, but I think he owns about 40% of Infusionsoft. He owns a good chunk of it. And so he pushed it on all of us. I became a certified partner with Infusionsoft so I could do build outs. And I started holding more events. I was like, if I can just hold more events. So I was trying to hold, one year I held 2015. I think I held 5 events. And I was like, if I can hold 15 events next year, this will go through the roof. Well, like if you've heard the saying, what got you here won't get you there. That's kind of what happened, because at this point now I've got like, I think I had 30 or 35 different email addresses that it's me and 2 VAs managing. We've got a multitude of websites up. Like nothing is well organized. Google Drive was around, but it wasn't what it is today. Like I think about, it's so crazy. That was just 6 years ago, 7 years ago, right? Like, but nothing was well organized. And the whole machine came to a crashing halt in 2015 when Infusionsoft actually shut me down for spam complaints. And that actually pushed me onto ClickFunnels, got me started with Russell. And I knew who Russell was. I had read his first book was out, .com Secrets was out. So this might have been mid 2016. My dates might be slightly off. But I had read .com secrets and I looked at ClickFunnels, but I was like, Infusionsoft, I'm so plugged in over here. Well, Infusionsoft shut me down. So ended up starting with ClickFunnels. And then I also, in my events, I was getting sick of running Facebook ads for people. So this led to me eventually transitioning out of any of that and just helping people with live events. So the premise of this episode was, how do you do one-to-many sales, right? Well, what happened through this growth period, I held about 40 events total between 2014 and 2018. People started asking me, how do you hold live events? And it's not even how do you hold a live event, it's how do you sell from stage? Because you can hold a live event and put 75, 150, 200 people in a room. But if you're not selling anything, you're not going to make anything. There's a delta curve.
And you're an idiot. We learned that from Dan.
We did. There's a delta curve that happens somewhere around between 100 and 150 people where you make very much less on tickets because you have more overhead. Now you've got more staff, you've got more lighting, you've got more AV, you've got more stuff going on. So somewhere around like 100 to 150 people, you actually make less money than 80 people. And you really have to get over like the 250 mark to really start making money on ticket sales. At that point, you're better off to sell something as well. Like, you're always better to sell something. And that's what occurred to me in 2015. And that's when people would come to me and ask about live events. My first question is, what do you want to do with your live event? What's the purpose of it? I remember there was a chef that wanted to hire me, and he runs a how to cook online program. It's $97. I think it's $197 and $37 a month continuity, something like that. And he makes some kind of living. I think he probably makes 100, maybe 200 grand a year. He said, well, I really want to hold an event. I really want to do this. He said, well, what do you want to do at the event? Well, I just want to bring people together. I said, well, you can do that. You're not like, it's going to be a loss leader for you though. Like, why don't you sell something? He's like, I don't understand what I can sell them. I said, son, like, we can come up with that. This is like the core component of any sale. People are buying you. They're not buying the thing that you sell. If they're buying the thing that you sell, you're selling a commodity, give it up. But when you start to put yourself out front and sell yourself, you can charge whatever you want, because people are buying that relationship. They're buying the outcome of your relationship, but at the core, they're buying you. That's what selling from stage is. That's what selling from a webinar is. That's what selling from a workshop is. Like, people who come to a workshop want your direct feedback. They want the outcome that you offer, but more than that, they want you. And the minute you realize this and start putting yourself out, you will start making a whole lot more money. So 2018, we transitioned into helping people build live events and sell from stage. We've done that very successfully for a handful, about 9 or 10 clients, because it's a lot of work to put on events. So 2018, we held, I want to say 3 client events. 2019, we held 4, plus I was holding my own events at the same time. When COVID hit, we transitioned into webinars. I didn't feel confident in doing a virtual event because I didn't know how to do it. I hadn't done one, and I'd thrown a ton of stones at them over the years. So we went into webinars, which we've now helped 27 different influencers hold webinars, build their webinar out, help them with conversion. We're at over 3.6 million in sales as of today. I looked at the revenue for last month. So doing very well in the webinar space. Now that the world is opening back up post-COVID, I held my first live event. It was a co-hosted event 2 months ago, and we're holding another one in September and then one in October. So live events are definitely coming back. People want to be out. That's kind of the story arc. I'm happy to jump into some one-to-many sales tips, tactics, strategies, what makes it work.
So let's I want to hear some of the key insights. So you shared so far that people want the outcome, but more than that, they want you. And that's almost kind of at odds with the whole idea of one-to-many sales, right? I mean, you want to do one-to-many sales so that you have leverage in what you're doing.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, you're telling me that people want you, they want your help. So I guess my kind of elaborate on that, because I'm sure there is no contradiction, or there are choices that have to be made, and just walk us through that.
Sure. So, okay, in our realm, coaches, consultants, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say coaches, like it could be agency owners, even it could be anyone who has a mid to high price lifetime client value. So client value needs to be reasonable. The problem where people scale, like with scale, is there's a couple. The ones that I'm going to point to, though, if let's say that you're a health coach, how many people can you directly help? Well, if you really want to push it, you can maybe get to 20 people a month or a week in one-on-ones. And that's pushing, right? I mean, that's 4 people a day that you're meeting with for an hour. If we're saying an hour. Now, sure, you can mess with time, whatever, but I think it's a general assumption you're going to coach somebody for an hour. If you're meeting with 4 a day, that's a lot. You're going to be tired. That's a full workload because you've got the other parts of the business to run as well. So how do you have a couple things that you can move in there. You can work with people less. You can build a group program, or you can charge more for your time. How do you charge more for your time? You have to have more leads. To get more leads coming in and to scale what you're doing, then you can charge more. And people buy celebrity, they don't buy commodity, right? I mean, if you look at, you can point to the Kardashians. I don't particularly like them at all, but they're really easy to point to. $1 billion brand built on nothing more than who she is. That's it. People, like, companies pay her millions of dollars to do one Instagram. And all she's doing is selling who she is. So how do you do that in your space? If you look at the people who are the biggest in your space, we look at the biggest health coaches out there. What they have done is they have built themselves into a celebrity. What does a celebrity have? They have stories that they tell. They have their legend story, which is what we just went through for me. They have parables, which are small stories that teach what they do so that people understand them. And then they have their mission stories. Their mission stories are what drives them. All of those told create their persona and their legend. They become something that people want to be. And when you have that, people will pay more money for what you do. If you wanted to be, I mean, I don't know, pick like Billy Banks, right? He teaches the jump around aerobic stuff. If you want to go learn from him directly, you can. Last I saw, this was a couple of years ago, but I used him as an example. I don't know why that came up. You can go learn from him. It's $20,000 to spend a weekend with him and get a couple months of follow-up. Well, if you put 10 people in a room paying you that's $200K piece. If you want to run a small coaching program, right? If you want to run a group program, you're going to cap how many people are in it, and you have a price point. How do you sell, though, from one to many, right? You need to put together a live event. You need to get in front of people. Celebrity builds when you do that, because you're not just up there teaching, you're actually building your legend. You're telling these stories, you're getting people to share them for you. So one-to-many sales allows you to push your price point up because you have a wider audience to go from. The narrower your audience, not narrow in terms of, I'm a like narrow niche.
Not in terms of niche, but in terms of fewer options. Yeah, you feel like, I don't know who else to talk to, so I'll sell them whatever. Yeah, that's a classic sales problem. Is I'll sell them whatever they want, which of course is a recipe for frustration.
Disaster. Yeah. I mean, the other thing. So, I mean, that I don't know if that answers that. Go ahead.
It's good. And I also want to go in the direction of stories. I think you have stories at scale. Is that that .com, right? Storiesatscale.com, correct? That's one of your sites. Yep. Yeah. So you break down storytelling into legend story, parables, and mission story. So legend story, I get. That's kind of like your origin story, I imagine. Mission story, I imagine you refer to the stories that describe your reasons why you do what you do, I imagine. And parables are what?
Parables are teaching stories. So
Okay.
parables, if you look at, so one of the parables that I tell is, think of your favorite high school teacher, high school or college. Think of your favorite teacher. Now think of your least favorite teacher. When you think about your least favorite teacher, they're probably standing at the board. They're probably teaching. They're writing. They're giving you a ton of homework. When you think of your most favorite teacher, you think of somebody who probably knew your name, probably was engaging, probably didn't teach as much, but was more fun to be in their class. So I have two questions for you. The first one is, which one do you remember more from? The second one is, which one knew more? Which one taught more? Inside of that story, and I can tell, sometimes when I tell this, I tell my high school story. I tell a little piece of it. If you think about that, what most coaches and consultants want to do is they want to stand up and teach, because that's where they feel the most competent. Their ego is saying you have to teach. Well, that a lot of people, we're at an 8, 9, or 10 in what we do. Most people coming into our world are at a 1 or 2. If we try to take them from a 1 or a 2 to a 6, 7, 8, we're going to cause a lot of brain fatigue. We're going to put a lot of pressure on them, and they are going to shut down. Because at the end of the day, people respond to what they feel. 100%. So how do you make them feel good? Teach less. Your job is not to get them from a 1 or a 2 to a 6, 7, 8. Your job is to get them to move baby step from a 1 to a 1.5, or from a 2 to 2.5. You do that by being engaging, having fun, telling stories, making them laugh. And that's the difference between your high school teacher that you loved and the one that you hated. When you think about it that way.
And it's that's definitely a very important point, because so many people think that if I just show them how much I know, right? If I teach them all this, they're going to come back for more, which is often not true. Often not true. And that shows up in many different ways. I'm just, kind of eliminating various tangents that we could go off on, though, right? So in my head, one thing that a lot of people are taught is to have this, like you have a tripwire offer, a very low price offer. And there are some people who promote that idea very heavily, and others who say, well, when you do that, then most people will not buy more, right? For example, like if you sell somebody for $7 or $100, whatever it is, they might buy it. And if they never go through it, or they don't feel like they make progress, they don't come back to you for the next step, because they figure, well, I still haven't gone through that. Instead, interestingly enough, they go off looking for somebody else's help.
Mm-hmm.
And who are they drawn to? They're drawn to the one who tells great stories, the person who draws them in, who builds on their imagination, who engages them and leads them forward in a way that actually, at a pace that works for them. And that's the person they end up spending the $5,000, the $10,000, the $50,000 with, even though you may have done a better job with them. What were you going to say?
Well, there's so much to unpack in there. One thing I'll tell you about tripwires. So the solution to this, and when I say this, it will make perfect sense. It's like what's right in front of everybody's face. Your tripwire should solve one super, super specific pinpoint problem.
Right.
And it should be consumable. This is the key. Consumable in under 20 minutes. What is one super usable thing that you can teach your audience in under 20 minutes? That should be your tripwire, because what does that do? It solves all the problems you just laid out, because you're 100% correct. It gets them to consume. It gets them to realize that you have a lot more that you can teach them, because you should be seeding all the stuff that you can do in that 20 minutes. And it gets them a result. The problem it's like counterintuitive, but it speaks to what we just spoke about. We want to teach. Coaches, consultants, teach. That's what our ego screams. I'm going to give them so much value. Well, value to us, what you're saying in that, the presupposition is that value is heft. It's a 300-page document. It's a free course. That's not what people might say they want that, but their actions speak louder than words. They'll take it because it's there, but then they don't consume it. They don't finish it. So instead, give them one ultra specific, small thing that pushes them, and they're like, oh my goodness, like not pushes them, but gets them a result. That's it. And then they can buy more. That's a much better, that's how a tripwire should be designed. But people let their ego get in front of them.
I'm going to say what you're saying slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
The true value is leading people to experience some kind of shift in how they're looking at their situation, so that now they have the clarity and the energy to take the next step.
Yeah.
To move forward, and if you can do that, it's not about how much you know. It's not about how much they might need to know over the next 5 years. It's just helping people take action, because we all get stuck on things that are not real. I'm working with clients on this or that, whatever it might be, starting an alchemy network and so on. And I got stuck for myself because I think I got trapped in the expert's curse, right? The curse of the expert, where you assume, well, everybody knows what I know, so can't be that valuable, right? So, but over time, I've come to realize, I've actually working with people, I've come to realize that I built some really impressive expertise over the years, and I'm able to help a client, not with anything complicated, but a client is at point A trying to get to point B, and they take a step or two or three, and suddenly they have a question, and they can't move forward because they think, well, I don't know how to do this or that, or maybe I can't do this or that. They just need me to kind of point them, say, no, you're just standing in front of this. You're trying to walk through the door. The door is 1 foot to the left. Just, move over. The door is right there. Now keep walking. Oh yeah. Okay. Got it. Now they could see the path forward. Their energy returns, their enthusiasm returns, their confidence returns, and they're able to take that next step forward. And that's ultimately what people really want, is they want to feel that they're constantly able to move forward towards a dream. They want to feel that if they get stuck, if they don't know what to do next, that have someone they could turn to who genuinely cares about them and has their best interests at heart. And it could be an individual, a coach, it could be a community, it could be a mentor. So, these are, I think that absolutely, there was a time, in the early days where, and Dan Kennedy was big into this, I think, in the early days, although not sure if he changed in this way, but I don't know. There was the 5-pound box of stuff, right? We're going to send you all these bonuses, the 5-pound box of stuff. And there's still a lot of that out there, virtual stuff that will sit on your drive. And sometimes that's effective, but ultimately that's really, I think maybe in the beginning, people are more drawn to that because they get excited by the learning. But as people make some progress and they find they're stuck, they come to realize it's not about knowing more. It's about more deeply understanding the things that I already know. And for that, I need conversations with people on my path, a little ahead of me, a little behind me. And that's really the way to learn that. And that goes back to like, what do people really buy? So now when you understand what people really buy, how do you then, and then we'll wrap up with this, how do you then kind of infuse that? How do you advise your clients to infuse that into their webinar? Is it the offer? Is it the whole process of the webinar? I mean, I remember you were telling me a story about you going over a mutual friend of ours' webinar, and she was already doing well selling. Maybe you mentioned who it is. I don't know what your agreement there is. And you made a list of 20 something points, I think you said, and about areas. What is it that you noticed? What can you share with us
Sure.
just to take away and use for ourselves?
So this is a great way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for bringing it full circle, because it's the secret here is she does multi-millions per year in sales.
She's great.
She's crushing it. What we looked at and what we saw, she had a large audience. She still has a huge audience, right? What we saw, though, what I saw and what she immediately saw, one, she's teaching a ton. The places where she was building relationship. So in a webinar, if we broke it down percentage wise, you should have about 20 to 25% of the webinar should be the offer. And if you just cringed a little bit, I'm going to go back into what the offer looks like. The offer is actually where you build relationship, not where you just say, buy this, buy this, buy this. We'll come to that in a second. So that leaves 75%. Of that 75%, teaching should be about 25%, maybe less. And it's because what are you doing on a webinar? If you're there to get people to have a reality shift and see that they need something different. You are teaching them, but it is one little baby step. The point of the webinar is not to teach them everything that you know. It is to get them to pivot from looking to their left, take that one step, and see the door that they can walk through. And that's it. It is to get them to see it and move just a little bit. The offer is where you get to teach them. Once they pay you money, you teach them. So what we did with her webinar specifically was we added her hero's journey story. So the origin story that we went through here, a lot of people's origin stories bounce all over the place. It's not a smooth like story arc that goes from point A to point B to point C to point D to outcome, right? Instead, it bounces all over the place and it looks like a scribble on a piece of paper. People can't follow that. They don't, what people want to see in your origin story is they want to see that you were where they are and that through hard work, determination, and a bit of luck, you overcame the obstacles and you did things the hard way. That, like the Rocky story, every great story, I mean, Hero with 1,000 Faces, right? Every story follows this, and we never, ever, ever get sick of hearing it. Every movie in the world follows that same basic premise. Hero had problem. Hero struggled to overcome problem. Hero has great outcome. We love that story. And everybody who is successful in the space has that. Her story was not shown in the correct way. Number one, it was kind of zigzaggy all over the place. Number two, it was not something that she focused on. So she still taught. We toned down the teaching a little bit. So instead of trying to take them from a 1 or a 2 to a 10, we were taking them to like a 3. And we did it through stories. We embedded pieces that go back to her hero's journey story throughout the webinar so that people felt like they actually knew her, because we buy and we spend more money with people that we feel are personally invested in our journey and that care about us. How do we do that? We build it through personal story and personal connection. We added a ton of that into the front end. So when we started working together, her offer was probably 20-ish percent, 25%. She had that about right, but she did not have stories built into her offer. The front half out of the 75%, 60% of it was teaching. So we changed that to be more 50-50. So that 75% was more, probably like 35-40 teaching to stories. Then we also tied those stories. So you use those stories to future pace people into your offer. So you tell and you leave an open loop in the beginning around something that is the closed loop closes in the offer. That gets people to be like, oh man, I see how she did that. I see how you did that in the offer. The offer so offer should have 5 key pieces. I'll just be really quick with this. 5 key pieces. In those 5 key pieces, each one should overcome a specific objection and be preceded with a story. That's it. When you do it that way, you will get much better close rates. So we changed her by quite a bit. The other thing so this applies to stage as well. If you think about events that you've gone to, there's that person who gets up on stage and just teaches a bunch of crap, right? They're like, teach. One, you probably feel overwhelmed. You probably get tired because our brain gets shut down when we're overwhelmed. Number 2, you probably don't remember any of it. It is much better to be on stage, teach one core thing, and have people learn that and walk away saying, I want to know more about that, because then they'll actually get involved. Learning, you might have a big aha in a moment, but then you have to learn about that for somewhere at least a couple hours before you'll start to implement it. And that's really the change that happens when people buy your program or buy you as a coach. That's where you get to really change people's lives.
Just one thought on what you said is that, a lot of people don't like the typical webinar sales webinar style. And I want to emphasize that um, you can effectively do everything that you're talking about without sounding like that pitch man or pitch woman that none of us enjoy listening to. Although, it's effective in some markets for some people. But what we're talking about is that even if you're 100% genuine, as you were when you organized that first event for the restaurant, you come across as completely genuine. I imagine that's how you were then. Even if you're 100% genuine, people need to be related to or connected with in a certain way. Otherwise, they just don't even hear you. So one of the things I heard this idea a long time ago. It's an observation about why stories are so powerful, because stories kind of they're like that secret agent that gets behind our natural defenses and delivers an idea that you can't just deliver in the same way as information. You deliver with information. We have all sorts of questions and challenges, but you tell me a story and like, okay, I got it. And that's a big part of what the power of storytelling is. And, so laying that out in webinars in a way that it's your stories. You're looking to say, well, how can I tell my story? How can I get my ideas across in a way that is genuinely me? That's what you're talking about. Steve, it's I know I've learned a lot, really enjoyed getting to know you that much better. And I'm sure your audience here on your podcast feels the same way. Where would you want your audience to go as a next step with you now that they've gotten to know you better?
I mean, if you guys haven't picked up my story selling blueprint, storyselling.how, STORYSELLING.HOW will get you a free story selling blueprint. It'll kind of walk you through what a perfect story looks like and what you should look for and how you can start using it in your business. If you want help with your webinars, Death to Bad Webinars will get you my webinar template. It'll show you the 5 biggest mistakes that people make and how to avoid them. Both of those are really good. We spent some time on them. They are easily consumable in under 20 minutes, and they'll get you thinking in the right direction when it comes to those two. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any questions, I love this stuff, obviously, you can always reach out to me. There's contact info in the show notes. Dove, I want to say thank you so much. For interviewing me and taking time to do this. This has been super fun, kind of turning the camera around a little bit on me.
My pleasure. Likewise.
Awesome. Well, to everybody listening, until next time, take action, change lives, and make money. And we'll see you soon.